This podcast may contain explicit language. I'm the boss. I'm the boss. Raging Bull is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique rating style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
No quippy comebacks tonight for a Scorsese film? I would have thought for sure you would have.
This is by far one of Scorsese's best films.
We'll get into that. Tonight for our 292nd episode, we discuss the boxing biopic Raging Bull from 1980, celebrating its 45th anniversary. Directed by Martin Scorsese, written by Paul Schrader and Mardik Martin, cinematography by Michael Chapman, music by Jim Henriksen, editing by Thelma Schoonmaker, starring Robert De Niro as Jake LaMotta, Joe Pesci as Joey LaMotta, Cathy Moriarty as Vickie LaMotta, Nicholas Colasanto as Tommy Cuomo, Teresa Saldana as Lenora LaMotta, Frank Vincent as Salvatore Salvi Batts, Lori Ann Flax as Irma LaMotta. I think it's Irma. Irma. It's with an I, so who knows. Mario Gallo as Mario. Great creative name there. Frank Adonis as Patsy. Joseph Bono as Guido. I mean, come on, guys. And Frank Topham as Toppy. Seriously? These are the character names? I thought Paul Schrader was supposed to be good at this shit. Anyway, background for the movie, quickly. Raging Bull was released on December 19th, 1980. On a budget of roughly $19 million, Raging Bull would make $23.4 million to finish number 27 at the worldwide box office for 1980. It received widespread critical acclaim at the time and was nominated for 8 Oscars, including Best Picture, Director for Martin Scorsese, Supporting Actor for Joe Pesci, Supporting Actors for Moriarty, Cinematography for Michael Chapman, and Sound. Raging Bull won 2 Oscars for Best Actor for Robert De Niro and Film Editing for Thelma Schoonmaker. By the end of the 1980s, Raging Bull had cemented its reputation as a modern classic. It was voted as the best film of the 1980s in numerous critics' polls and is regularly pointed to as both Scorsese's best film and one of the finest American films ever made. Several prominent critics, among them Roger Ebert, declared the film to be an instant classic and the consummation of Scorsese's earlier promise. Ebert proclaimed it as the best film of the 1980s and one of the 10 greatest films of all time. Now, of course, we can't do this alone, so we bring in our great returning celebrity guest for the evening, the hosts of Movies in Us and TV in Us, which is about to join the Movie Archer Network in a few weeks, making their second appearance on the show to date. The real deals of podcasting appeal. Please welcome back Jen and Sarah.
I feel like I need to be entering in a ring with that intro. Yeah. That was great.
Ready to go.
I'm trying to do my best Michael Buffer impersonation. He's like way up there in age, and hopefully eventually like they need somebody to step in. I'd be glad to make like $1 million a fight for just coming in for like 30 seconds of work.
Sounds great. This is a good like audition tape, putting in your reps. This is great.
So how have you both been since last year's episode of the Maltese Falcon?
Yeah, things have been great. We have a lot of really exciting milestones, I think, in the past year over us on our pod. It was awesome having y'all on to talk about Jaws. I feel like Maltese Falcon, Jaws, Raging Bull, we're racking up a good docket of films together, guys. So this will be fun.
Definitely some classics.
Mm-hmm.
So, What made you pick Raging Bull tonight?
So I would like to defer to Jen on this one because she loves Scorsese. I like this movie. I like Scorsese. But of the two of us, Jen is the one who really loves Scorsese. So I would like to hear her answer.
So I'm a big Martin Scorsese fan. His films personally resonate a lot with me. And I think a lot of the themes that he explores around the nature of humans, of good and evil, and all of that is really powerful. This film, I think, is like a fabulous example of a Scorsese film. A lot of the themes and ideas that he's really fascinated by are really intense, and are all baked into this. Like, who is this? Not, I mean, it's categorized as a sports drama, but it's really a character drama, I think, first and foremost, for what Scorsese wants to say about the nature of masculinity, self-destructive behaviors, the violence, the like undealt with feelings and emotions and paranoia that our protagonist experiences over the course of the film. So I'm a huge fan of Raging Bull. I think it is a great example of what Scorsese brings to the filmmaking world, what he's captivated by.
So I'm just going to quickly go through a few of the accolades here for Raging Bull. I know that most people have judged this as one of the greatest films of all time, as I was mentioning before. Raging Bull was listed by Time magazine as one of the all-time 100 movies. Variety magazine ranked the film number 39 on their list of the 50 greatest movies. Raging Bull is fifth on Entertainment Weekly's list of the 100 greatest movies of all time. The film tied with The Bicycle Thieves and Vertigo at number 6 on the Sight and Sound's 2002 poll. On the directors and critics list from that year combined, Raging Bull gets the most votes of any movie that has been produced since 1975. In 2002, Film 4 had a poll of the 100 greatest movies on which Raging Bull was voted in at number 20. Leonard Maltin included Raging Bull on his 100 must-see films of the 20th century. Roger Ebert named Robert De Niro's transformation from sleek boxer to paunchy nightclub owner in Raging Bull as one of the 100 greatest movie moments. The National Society of Film Critics ranked it at number 75 on their 100 essential films list. Rolling Stone magazine ranked it number 6 on their 100 maverick movies in the last 100 years. The Writers Guild of America named the film the 76th best screenplay of all time. I could keep going. I mean, there's many, many other ones. The AFI had it at number 24 on their 100 Years, 100 Movies. 100 Years, 100 Thrills. It was number 51. Number 4 on their 100 Years, 100 Movies 10th anniversary edition. So when they redid it, it actually moved up. And the number 1 sports movie of all time. Not to mention the Cinema Legacy poll, which is now the preeminent poll of all greatest movie polls, had it tied at number 105 out of 120 plus ties. So 122 films. It was recognized on that list as well. It currently holds a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 90 score on Metacritic, and a 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Now, I mention all of that to come around and say, I do not understand what the point of this movie is. In Scorsese's other works, Taxi Driver, we get somebody of just sheer insanity, and looking in at the perspective of somebody who is ostracized by society, but feels himself to be the hero of his own movie. In Wolf of Wall Street, we get a look at these guys, these titans of industry that are supposed geniuses, that are really just drugged up addicts that are on this bender of constant adrenaline junkiness in their own way. In The Departed or Goodfellas, like, I get a lot of these Scorsese movies. I understand why most of them are made. In no way, this is now my second time watching it. It is the second time I have thought the exact same thing. I do not understand why the fuck this movie was made, because Jake LaMotta is an irredeemable character who does not in any way try to like grow or mature at all during the course of the film. He just continues to be the same asshole all the way through, and I don't find him to be interesting. So please, somebody, for the love of God, spare me from my crazy pills over here. Why the fuck does everybody think this is one of the greatest movies of all time?
I will let our guests go first if they choose, but I have your answer.
Oh, I'm ready to hear Dana Duncan's answer for this.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Scorsese's films all fit within, well, not all, but 90% of them fit within 3 basic tenets. Okay? Catholic guilt, greed, and obsession. And how greed and obsession ultimately destroys, which is part of the whole Catholic guilt phase, I guess, to some extent. Okay? You can look at anyone. Goodfellas, or greed, destruction.
Okay, so where in this film is there greed and obsession?
Obsession. Because,
Okay, I guess I can buy Obsession.
all right, LaMotta's obsessed with winning the title and doing it on his own. And when he gives into his I can go it alone obsession and ties in with the mob, what ends up happening? He ends up getting caught in the middle of that dive fight, and it almost destroys him. He gets obsessed with a 15-year-old girl, and it completely dictates the rest of his life. He becomes obsessed with her, then he becomes obsessed with her fidelity. And the fact is the last half of the film, or last 25, 30 minutes of the film with him and his nightclub owner is just the result. It's his self-destruction that has led him to this buffoon that is kind of making it, or trying to make it in the world, based on where he was and where he could have been and what he ended up being. And LaMotta, by reality is LaMotta, took a great pride in this film. And in fact, he should have been kind of outraged because it did not make him look good. All right.
I will provide additional details to that note because I think you need some context there.
This is a tragic figure who could have been and was at least at one point on top of the world, and by his own obsessions ended up destroying himself.
Okay.
So I think it's the ultimate character study in how
the ultimate
greed,
the ultimate character study.
Well, a pretty darn good one of what obsession and
this is number one
will ultimately result in your self-destruction.
Okay, so out of all of Scorsese's movies that are about this is number one for you. Not to mention anybody else. This is the top.
I think this is the most nuanced because it's easy to look at somebody like, to look at Taxi Driver and think of his obsession because it's almost a caricature. Okay. It's not a real person. Very seldom do you see Bickles running around in the world. And if they do, they're like of great notoriety because of their bizarre behavior. Jake LaMotta is a sports icon from the 50s who is a middleweight champion who has some name recognition and such, and you get to see him self-destruct. And that's ultimately what drives, I think, Scorsese into these films, is to watch the character study of how their obsession or their greed ends up destroying themselves.
Other opinions?
Go ahead, Sarah. I'm curious to hear you share your
Somebody
thoughts.
put the
Raging
gloves
Bull.
on here.
And I have some thoughts after.
No, go ahead, Jen.
Well, to build on Dana's point, I think what in this watch I found most fascinating about Raging Bull, compared to a lot of other films that feature protagonists with huge egos and hubris and ultimately have their downfall, is that Jake LaMotta is obsessed, but he doesn't even know what to be obsessed about over the course of a lot of the film. You see that he feels this constant need to prove himself in romance, in his family life, in his career, in the public eye, but it's this constant shifting and changing objective that he has, and he's flailing in a lot of ways, which is very different from, I think, a lot of other protagonists that have a very clear fixation. He's actually constantly changing and shifting what he's obsessed about and what is causing him paranoia or causing him to self-destruct. And I think that restlessness, that wandering, that like utter lack of clarity about what he wants, but he's just running in 5 different directions, is what makes him a more interesting and complex protagonist to me compared to other stories, which we've seen a million times about a tragic character like this who just self-destructs. But he actually is flailing in 17 directions all at once in every area of his life for a bulk of the film. And I think that inability to even know what he wants to be obsessed by is part of Scorsese's point that I think he's trying to make in this film around like the human existence, which is that like none of us really know it, but he's desperately trying to grasp onto something that will give him meaning and identity and value in some way.
Yeah. The only other thing that I would add to this is I love how it's filmed. I love that this is primarily in black and white. And I think that Scorsese's use of black and white is obviously helpful in, transporting us back into time. But I think that it also is really effective in highlighting a lot of the violence that we see in this. And I think for me, seeing, especially like when the blood is dripping from the ring or you're seeing blood like flying all over the place, I think the fact that it's in black and white makes it seem more gruesome to me for some reason. So a lot of those like filmmaking techniques and styles, I think, really stand out for me as to why this is such an iconic film.
Don't get me wrong. I can see the craftsmanship and the artistry in how it's made. The one shot from them entering into the ring and then carrying down the ramp and to the side of the ring and going up into the ring, as well as the like straight on shots, are iconic from this. Like there's a cinematography, there's a sound making that I understand and appreciate all of that. I'm ultimately confused because Jake LaMotta reminds me so much of a bunch of pseudo tough guys that I grew up around that love to puff out their chest and think that they're all that. And I never found any of those guys interesting because they weren't going anywhere with their lives. The only difference here is that Jake LaMotta got into a ring and eventually had a shot at a title, but he probably pissed away 3 years trying to get there on his own instead of trying to take some of the easier ways to get there.
But that's the whole point. I mean, the whole purpose of this is the canvas, which is Jake LaMotta, is a much more subtle way of presenting the situation than if you were to just write it. The tendency to write it would be to make it more two-dimensional. He's much more three-dimensional because he's a real person. It's kind of the equivalent of studying French Impressionist art and looking at Renoir or Monet and then looking at later paintings of I have a sudden drew a blank. The Spanish artist that
Dali?
No. Yeah.
Picasso. To look at later Picasso, which is very, very, just one dimensional, like lines and cubes. And so it's just made to look more bizarre so that it looks more artistic. And you miss the subtleties, the little nuances of it. And by using a real life person in his life and portraying it in certain ways, you were able to pick up the differences between what would be, the little subtleties that make the difference between, of what you're ultimately trying to say, which is that this is really about self-destruction, obsession, etc. And you have to actually look at it. You can't just, it's not like it's going to be like laying in your lap. Here's the formula that by which you need to understand what I'm trying to say in this film. You actually have to watch, observe, and think about this a lot more than you do with some other films. I'm sorry. So you're saying I never watched the film?
I don't think, quite frankly, I'm not sure you did.
Okay. We'll cut to relationships because I think that's just absolutely preposterous. But
it's a matter of you have to look at it within a certain context. For example, when we talked about it.
Oh, please lecture me here.
Well, no, you ask. So
I did.
If you don't like,
but now
if you don't like it, you don't have to listen, because then again, that's usually what happens. But when we watched No Country for Old Men, you watched it the first time and you came down and you were younger and you said, I don't get it. And I said, how can you not get it? It's great because the ending is what the movie is all about, which is you live your whole life to achieve something and then you realize that it was all for naught because what you did to try to stop criminals your whole life failed and they win. And so that's the whole point of it. It's a satirical look at how middle-aged elderly men look on their past lives. That's
okay. So the next time you don't get a film and you come on here and you'd say that, I'll just say you weren't watching it next time.
Okay. You
Okay.
kind of do anyway, but that's all right.
No, I think I'm a little bit more respectful than that. Anyway, my relationship to this is very simple. I watched it one time about probably 8 years ago to cross it off the list on the AFI Top 100 list, and because it applied to both lists, and I've watched both lists. But this is now the second time I'm watching it. I don't feel like I need to return to it anytime soon. I'm sure I will watch it again at some point, but I will probably, as I often do, get more out of this discussion than I will out of actually watching the film, because I didn't apparently watch it. So, other relationships to the film.
Yeah, for me, this is also my second time watching. I watched it for the first time during the pandemic. I had not a lot else going on, so I watched a lot of movies that I hadn't seen, and this was one of them.
I think a lot of us were in the same shoes. I got through a lot of classic movies that way.
I convinced my dad in 1980 to get HBO by offering to pay half of it out of my earnings from high school, my high school job. And I watched this 2 or 3 times on HBO when it was first put on HBO after it was released. So this would have been fall of 80 or spring of 81, something like that. And I really liked it and had a lot of respect for it. And then I didn't watch it again. And then this summer when we were putting together the our lists for Cinema Legacy poll, I was looking at Scorsese films, and everybody rants and raves about Goodfellas, and I'm not a big fan.
Because you weren't watching it.
That's right. I wasn't. At least not watching it the way everybody else apparently was. Anyway. And so I started thinking about it, and I'm going, Raging Bull, I always thought was a really good film, and I always, in the back of my mind, had said it was this best film. So I watched it this summer while I was on vacation up in a cabin in northern Wisconsin. And I came to the conclusion that I think it is Scorsese's best film. And so for the very reason that it offered him an opportunity to create a character that had lots of subtleties and human frailties and such, and to kind of put his spin on what this all meant. And so now I watched it again, and I confirmed my original or my position from this summer. I had this in the top 25 on my list.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this was like maybe number 10 on my Cinema Legacy poll list. So this was high for me. I watched this, a couple of years ago when I really started becoming more and more captivated and interested in Scorsese as a filmmaker. So I was going back through his filmography and got to watch this one. And it was like a visceral experience to watch this. And this is my second watch. There's a lot more interesting choices that I think go into this film that I didn't remember as much the first time around, even just like from a pacing perspective. There's so much time spent actually in the family dynamics. And in my head, I've thought those were a lot more of the boxing sequences, but they're actually like very, very short within the film. The film's like not interested. It's like a secondary storyline to the family drama. So that was fascinating. So I'm excited to talk about some of those things.
Dad, do you have a plot summary ready for us?
I do. Raging Bull is a biographical drama about boxer Jake LaMotta, played by Robert De Niro. The film follows Jake's rise in the ring during the 1940s and 50s, showing his intense drive to win and his struggles to control his anger. His brother and manager, Joey LaMotta, played by Joe Pesci, tries to keep Jake focused, but the relationship becomes strained as Jake's temper grows. Outside the ring, Jake's jealousy and insecurities hurt the people closest to him, especially his wife, Vickie, played by Cathy Moriarty. As Jake's behavior pushes others away, he begins to lose everything he worked for. The movie shows how his personal battles become just as destructive as the fights in the boxing ring, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions.
I'm glad you explained that to me so that I knew what the film was about since I didn't watch it.
You're welcome.
So, all right. Any other thoughts on what the movie is about?
Enlighten Tom.
Yeah. Anybody else want to have their turn?
I was going to say, I think from what you said previously around this film being a story arc where Jake doesn't grow at all, which on paper, like he kind of ends the film acting very similarly as he starts at the beginning of the film. But I think the scene with him in the prison cell is essential to this film because Scorsese loves a character that is deeply flawed, a lot of self-hatred, carrying a lot of guilt, and like doing a lot of really terrible things. He loves like a really terrible character, but there's a strand of humanity that like makes you go, but there's something in that person that is redeemable, that has the potential to be redeemable by the end of the film. And so I think that like that prison sequence, the fact that it happened so late in the movie, and then we get that whole ending sequence is like essential, I think, to what Scorsese's thesis is about, like the nature of humans, which is we are capable of being redeemable, but we also need to choose it for ourselves. And in this film, he doesn't choose it for himself. But I think that is also like important, that he doesn't grow, but he has potential to grow. And Scorsese loves the character.
That last piece, that last point I can work with. That you have to actually not only be presented with the choice, but actually choose it so that there's a little bit more active here. But I just have such a hard time with a character who is the same almost throughout the entire movie. How can you be a protagonist if you have no actual journey or development? You just kind of, stuff happens to you. And to me, that's why I find him utterly boring. But I will attempt to recontextualize.
Part of your problem, Tom, is you are self-reflective.
Oh, please tell me.
You are self-reflective. You are self-aware.
Okay,
and
so I can watch myself, just not movies.
Compliments are flowing.
Well, do you want to listen to this, or are you going to shut me out like you did the movie? So the point being
compliment
is you are yeah, okay, go right ahead. You are self-aware and self-reflective, and so you expect others to many times be the same. And that's the one thing you can say about Jake LaMotta. He has no fucking clue of what he is or what he was trying to do. He just does. And he's trying to just get by. And that's all that matters. And that, unfortunately, is the story of a lot of people.
Not to be too Freudian, but he is very much all id and no ego at all. And I know that sounds weird because machismo would be normally associated with the ego, but yeah, go back and read Freud, I guess.
Yes, and who had that on the bingo card for Tom and Freud tonight?
Yep, definitely. I definitely want to replace my father tonight. Anyway, moving back, let's go to Did You Know? In 1978, Martin Scorsese was at an all-time low after his last movie, New York, New York, in 1977, had bombed at the box office, followed by a near overdose resulting from an addiction to cocaine. Robert De Niro visited him in the hospital and told him that he had to clean himself up and make this movie about a boxer. De Niro had asked Scorsese many times before, but he had always refused. He didn't like sports movies anyway. But due to De Niro's persistence, he eventually gave in. Scorsese believed that his American career was over anyway, so he wanted to do one final film there and then move to Europe to make smaller movies. Many, including Scorsese, claim that De Niro saved Scorsese's life by getting him back to work, and that this movie cemented Scorsese's reputation as one of the most important American filmmakers of all time. So some additional background and context here. This movie, if for nothing else, you can probably then, and we'll save this for the scoring, of course, but give it credence for giving us the rest of Scorsese's career. Did you know? The Oscars were held the day after President Ronald Reagan was shot by John Hinckley, who did it as an attempt to impress Jodie Foster, who played a child prostitute in another of Scorsese's famous films, Taxi Driver, which also starred De Niro. Out of fear of being attacked, Scorsese went to the ceremony with FBI bodyguards disguised as guests who escorted him before the announcement of the Academy Award for Best Picture was made, the winner being Robert Redford's Ordinary People. So if you want to go back and probably watch the YouTube version of that, try and spot who the FBI agents were, all the power to you. That sounds like something Voldemort would do. And for our guests on this episode who are going to be in a shared network with him very soon, Voldemort refers to he who must not be named on this program because he doesn't like how much attention he gets from people in his own social circle. I think you know to whom I refer. Anyway, did you know? When the real Jake LaMotta saw the movie, he said it made him break down in tears and realize for the first time what a terrible person he had been. He asked the real Vickie LaMotta, "Was I really like that?" She replied, "You were worse."
The power of filmmaking, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes to show people that are not introspective, apparently, you have to hold up a mirror. What better way? Did you know? In preparation for his role, Robert De Niro went through extensive physical training, then entered in 3 genuine Brooklyn boxing matches and won 2 of them. I think there was somebody that said that he could have actually been a boxer if he chose to do it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I read that it was Jake LaMotta who said that about him.
Okay.
He did manage to break one of Joe Pesci's ribs.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did see that. Did you know? To add to the documentary-like realism, Martin Scorsese wanted mainly amateur actors and newcomers around Robert De Niro. Joe Pesci, at the time a frustrated, struggling actor managing an Italian restaurant in the Bronx, had to be persuaded several times to make the film rather than to return to the musical act he shared with fellow actor Frank Vincent, because they really liked his streetwise and authentic persona. To achieve the feeling of brotherhood between the 2 lead actors, De Niro and Pesci lived and trained with each other for some time before and even during filming. Ever since then, they have been very close friends. Scenes from an Italian restaurant? That's kind of what I'm feeling here right now.
Yeah.
All right. And finally, did you know? To show up better on black and white film, Hershey's chocolate syrup was used for blood. The makers found that it looked even more convincing than real blood. To achieve the effect of blood gushing and spraying from Robert De Niro's face, the actor wore a prosthetic nose that was filled with the fake blood, which would squirt in every direction upon impact with punches.
So that's why those guys were standing underneath the ring with cups of ice cream.
Sure. That was the reason. Not because it was probably 1,000 degrees in there. I mean, every scene during the summers in here seemed so fucking hot. But maybe that's just like New York in the summer. I don't know. I've never been to New York in the summer.
Yes, you were.
Was it in the summer?
It was in the summer.
I thought it was like in the fall, but all right. Well, maybe
Yeah,
it
they're
was
like at
summer.
the pool.
Yeah, multiple times. Anyway, that looks like a good spot for our first break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 293rd episode, we welcome back Betsy and Trent Gorham of the Never Seen It pod to discuss Promising Young Woman from 2020, celebrating its 5th anniversary. Written and directed by Emerald Fennell, cinematography by Benjamin Krekun, music by Anthony Willis, editing by Frederick Thorival, or Torival. It had some weird accents on it, so I can't be guaranteed to pronounce that correctly. Starring Carey Mulligan, Bo Burnham, Allison Brie, Jennifer Coolidge, and Clancy Brown. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Before we move on much further, let's kick it to our guests. Ladies, what is going on with you, and what are you working on? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so we are Movies and Us, so you can search for Movies and Us in your favorite podcast app. You can also follow us at Movies and Us Pod on YouTube. You can connect with us on the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, at Movies and Us Pod as well. And come talk movies with us.
Excellent. And your new exciting venture, anything new on that front to discuss?
Yeah, we are joining the Movie Archer podcast network, which is very exciting. So there's a bunch of other great shows under that network as well. So you can check out more at moviearcher.com. There's a whole page where you can discover lots of other shows. Andrew from Revisionist Almanac, Nico Caruso, who's a short form creator. Lots of goodness there that's been very exciting that Adam Fried has been leading the helm on. So we also went to video this past year, and you both were actually like our first video episode. So that was very exciting and thrilling when we talked about Jaws. So we're on the YouTubes. That's a thing from the past year too.
Excellent. And as always, if you want any of our guest links, they will either be in the show notes for this episode, either on YouTube or wherever you're consuming this, your favorite podcast platform, insert whatever name there, or on the website, RonnieDuncanStudios.com, and then you'll find this as the top entry next week. Okay, so that brings us to the reveal of our most recent set of the Cinema Legacy poll rankings. Last week, we left you off at numbers 10 through 6. Just a quick reminder of what those films were. At number 10, we had Pulp Fiction. 9, Schindler's List. 8, 12 Angry Men. 7, Psycho. 6, Singing in the Rain. Without further ado, number 5, the highest rated movie on the list from the 1990s, which should be of no surprise to anyone. Coming from the year 1994, we have The Shawshank Redemption. Frank Darabont's only film on the list. All right, number 4, we have our final musical on the list to date. I believe this is number 8. Yes, our 8th different musical behind Singing in the Rain from last week. The Sound of Music, The Red Shoes, West Side Story, Cabaret, All That Jazz, Beauty and the Beast. This is the last musical on the list, our highest rated film from the 1930s. So we close out that decade as well. From 1939, The Wizard of Oz. Again, no surprise to anyone, especially with all the Wicked buzz and everything else that's going on here. I mean, it's to be expected. And then finally, for number 3, our highest rated film of the 1940s and our second to last Best Picture winner from 1942, winning for the year 1943, and number 1 on one of our guests' lists, we have Casablanca, our only film from Michael Curtiz. So, initial reactions, Dad.
I think there's a lot on there that's spot on. And then I had most of those in my top 5.
I believe
top 10, excuse me.
Of the top 10, you had 6 movies in your own top 10. In the top 10 that has been revealed, I had 7 of the top 10 of what the actual film list that corresponded with my own list. I said last week that I had 12 Angry Men as my number 1, but I think I had Psycho like 9th. So, I mean, all of these are fairly easy to see why they're top of the list. They've been fan favorites for years, and I mean, how can you really go wrong with any of the 3 of them? But we close out 3 more decades here, the 40s, 30s, and the 1990s. Now, if you've been paying attention, that means our top 2 films remaining, one is a Best Picture winner, the other is not, and we only have 1 decade remaining that we have not closed out. So I will let you figure that out on your own. But 2 films left to go next week on our Christmas Eve episode reveal.
Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Was that in the 70s? I don't know because I've never seen it.
Yeah. Oh, you haven't seen it?
Nope. Whenever we've gone to the Beloit Film Festival and you're like, we could go to that with everybody else, but I don't really feel like it. I'm like, I've never seen it. I don't see what the point is. So, yeah, if we want to skip it, fine.
So next time we go, and if it's playing, we'll go. It's just on late, and I'm like, I've seen it. Okay. And it's late, and I'm old.
No debate there. Ladies, any reactions?
Not to me, my being old.
No,
Oh.
Dana, I have the same reaction to you. Like, it's too late to go see that. Like, no, I don't need to stay up that late to watch that. Even though I love Rocky Horror Picture Show, nope, I'll watch it at home. It's fine. At a reasonable hour so I can go to sleep.
Sarah watches movies at the theater at like 9 in the morning.
I sure do.
So
9 a.m. That's when I like to go to the movies. Start your day off right.
Yeah. I think I did that this last weekend. I went to one at 9:50 because Sentimental Value was only on at 9:50 in the morning on a Saturday.
Oh.
So.
Yep. And sometimes that's how you get to see these gems. It's a good time.
Certainly.
I've been dying to see that. I want to see that so bad.
Well, we'll briefly touch on it here at the end, but we'll wait. And I'll try to be as spoiler-free as I can. But additional notes here. Again, as I mentioned, we had one more Best Picture winner. We have one more remaining, but Casablanca is our 27th different winner. We now have 2 from the 20s, 3 from the 30s, 3 from the 40s, 3 from the 50s, 4 from the 60s, 3 from the 70s, 1 from the 1980s. I wonder why 3 from the 1990s, 2 from the 2000s, 2 from the 2010s, and the lone film from the 2020s, Oppenheimer. As I mentioned also, our first and only Frank Darabont film with The Shawshank Redemption, our second and last Victor Fleming film in The Wizard of Oz, joining what other film? Dad, you have an idea?
Ooh.
I'll give you a hint. It's from the same year.
Gone with the Wind?
Yeah. He's one of the 4 listed directors on that, along with like George Cukor and like 2 other people that I can't remember. This is our only Michael Curtiz film. Current director breakdown is thus: we still have 5 from Kurosawa and 5 from Spielberg. Those are our 2 leading film directors at the moment. 4 from Christopher Nolan, 4 from Alfred Hitchcock, 4 from Quentin Tarantino, 3 from David Fincher, Stanley Kubrick, Paul Thomas Anderson, Billy Wilder, Martin Scorsese, and Sidney Lumet. The Wizard of Oz, as I said, was our last 1930s movie. Casablanca is our last 1940s movie. The Shawshank Redemption is our last 1990s movie. So we have closed out the 1960s with Psycho, the 1950s with Singing in the Rain, the 1980s with The Empire Strikes Back, the 2000s with There Will Be Blood, Parasite finished out the 2010s. We had only one film from the 2020s, and Nosferatu is the highest ranking film of the 1920s. If you did not hear a particular decade, that is because it is still remaining. So I will let you, again, try and figure that one out, and the 2 remaining films on the list. We have 4 films from the 1920s, 6 from the 1930s, 10 from the 1940s, 13 from the 50s, 11 from the 1960s, 15 from the 1970s, 13 from the 1980s, 23 from the 1990s, by far our number 1 decade, and at least 1 film from every single year in that decade, the only decade that we can say that. The 60s got really close. It was like missing 1969 is all. 12 films from the 2000s, 10 films from the 2010s, and 1 film from the 2020s. So any other thoughts on these 3?
With Casablanca as my number 2, I'm very pleased it's at number 3. I suppose, I don't know, everyone else that averaged out in the other direction to drop it a level, I'm upset at. Casablanca is just an absolute gem, a masterpiece. So I'm so pleased that it is in the top 3. Shawshank Redemption is a film that I will probably get crucified for saying. So I will join you, Tom, as you will get crucified in the rest of our episode. But people love this film and is constantly being celebrated with all of this praise and accolade. And it's a solid film, but I think I'm taking crazy pills with that one. So I'm shocked that it is quite high in this list as well. So I don't really get it, but alas, the people love it and the critics love it. So I will just be wrong, I suppose.
I only don't find it surprising because I think it is still the number 1 film on the IMDb list. But as always, if you want to catch any additional content, you can visit any of our socials at GMOT Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Twitter, basically anywhere. YouTube is also one of these places for any of the reels or shorts or additional things that we have up, as long as we still have our Scooby-Doo villain for another couple of weeks. And you can also catch the full list with all of the links to the GMOT episodes corresponding to every individual film on the list that's been revealed so far on our website, RonnieDuncanStudios.com/GMOT podcast. Okay, we left off at best performance. Dad, who did you have down?
De Niro.
Okay. You say that so matter-of-factly.
Same.
Also same.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be the different one then, but I'll let you guys vamp on De Niro for as long as you'd like. I have him as my best secondary just for that sake, but yeah.
When you watch his performance and you see, I know the big comment, I think it was Ebert saying the big shock was the boxer LaMotta versus the lounge singer or comedian or whatever you want to call him, LaMotta. No, I think there were three. The young LaMotta, and then the boxer, and then the lounge performer, LaMotta. And De Niro had three very distinct performances of each. And I thought he was by far, this is without doubt, in my opinion, his best acting performance overall.
I also had De Niro as mine as well. I am less interested a lot of times in the excitement around an actor transforming for a role being a reason why their performance is better. Like, that just doesn't speak to me as much. What I find most exciting about his performance in this film is the moments when he's quiet, but he's doing so much intense work with his eyes to communicate this like fuse that's about to be lit at any moment, the unpredictability, the intensity. There's a vulnerability as well that's behind all of the layers of the violence you see, and the instincts in his eyes that like cannot be contained, that I think this performance could have easily been like really big and loud and flashy and kind of just like barreling at you. And it is in a lot of ways on the surface, but I think there's a lot more depth that De Niro brings to this role that makes Jake a more interesting character than if you put another less experienced actor in there that's just doing the big, loud, splashy stuff that's bombastic and that's all you get. I think this film would have been way more one note, which is apparently a film that Tom watched, but there's more to it.
Yeah, same as Jen. I think that there is a depth to De Niro's performance while doing these very big things that is captivating. And I mean, Jake LaMotta is the worst. He sucks. And you're right, Thomas, he sucks from start to finish. But there's something in De Niro's performance that makes me want to keep watching, even though he is the worst. And I think there are these moments where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to continue on this journey with you, even though I don't like you as a person. And I think De Niro brings all of that and balances those two things out really well.
I actually think De Niro's performance, going from the young, more raw, naive LaMotta to the actual heavyweight champion, is much better than going from the heavyweight to the lounge performer. I mean, that was a lot of him relying on, I put on 50 pounds and I got the prosthetic on my face to make my face look puffier and my nose look different. I mean, I didn't find that transition to be much more impactful as the first transformation.
And just for a small correction, Jake LaMotta was never the heavyweight champion of the world. At best, he was a light heavyweight, but he was the middleweight champion of the world. For anyone who's currently screaming at their computer, their phone, or whatever device that you happen to be listening to this episode.
Misspoke.
Sure. Misspoke. Okay. Anyway, moving on. I also had him as my best secondary. I think I said a lot of what I needed to say about De Niro last week when we were discussing Heat, in that he is a very, while limited in range, a very transformational actor. You can always lose him in whatever you're watching. Yes, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's Robert De Niro. But he has an ability through his energy and his charisma to always lose himself in whatever role he's doing, no matter what he's basically up to. But for me, and I think that I'm going to have some slightly oddball nominees here, because I think most of you will probably go with the obvious ones, but I went with Michael Chapman for my best performance as the cinematographer. I think that some of the camera work in this is exceptional and really needed to be recognized. I already mentioned the one take shot where they're walking into the ring and then down into the crowd, and the rest of it, I thought that was extraordinary, especially given the limitations of 1980 yet. Then you have would you call it like a widescreen or like a panoramic view when like the boxer's up against the ropes and they're basically looking at each other or squaring each other up. I think that is also revolutionary for this particular type of movie and the sports movie and the style, to show them as not necessarily in the middle of battle, but that they have some agency in this back and forth of wills between the individual people. And there's some other just pristine shots, particularly from the ring and the action sequences of this, that I thought were exceptional here. So I'm recognizing Michael Chapman. My best secondary was De Niro. Who was everyone else's secondary?
I just want to say very quickly, I think your choice is brilliant, Tom. I think that's a great pick. Yes. Michael Chapman did an incredible job in the cinematography, and I'm glad that he's getting recognized. That's a great choice.
Just careful of your proximity to me, because as the internet backlash goes, it doesn't necessarily like save anyone. So
no, I genuinely think it's a great choice. Like, especially given that you don't love this film. Great thing to be able to highlight, because the cinematography is fantastic.
Your best take of the night.
What can I say?
My secondary is Joe Pesci. For this really being his first film, he does an incredible job of portraying the stable one of the two, which for Joe Pesci is saying something.
Yeah, I guess in every other movie that I remember him in, he's kind of the hothead at all times. Even down to like My Cousin Vinny. Every time like the railroad crossing or something wakes him up in the middle of the night, he's just like goes from 1 to 12 immediately.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always remember that when they were doing Home Alone, because every time he'd swear around Macaulay Culkin, he had to put a quarter in a jar, and the jar was able to have Spagos cater the wrap party from the jar.
I'm going to only assume by the name alone that must be very expensive.
Spagos was, and I'm trying to blank as to the name of the celebrity chef that was brought over from Austria specifically to cook for Schwarzenegger.
Wolfgang Puck?
Yes, Wolfgang Puck. And he started Spagos to cater to Hollywood, and Schwarzenegger was one of his big investors, and he made big based on that. But it was extremely expensive.
Okay. That does not surprise me in the least. Other secondary performances.
Okay, so I also wrote down Joe Pesci, but just to throw a curveball, I'm going to throw into the mix Lori Ann Flax, who plays Jake's first wife, Irma. I love that how'd you cook your steak scene where they're just yelling at each other. And her performance in that is fantastic. She's only on screen for like 3 minutes, but man, that is such an impactful scene. Really sets the tone for Jake's relationships with others, especially the women in his life. And the way that she just goes toe to toe with him, I absolutely love. So shout out to her. Great performance.
And I'll be honest, the way Jake actually wants his steak done is the correct way. You only need to barely sear it on each side. Yeah. Like, what is she doing?
She's just getting under his skin, and she knows what she's doing.
The most justified thing he says this entire movie.
Right. The only thing.
Yeah. I also initially wrote down Pesci, but I'm going to throw in another person to the mix that I think makes this movie what it is, which is the editing by Thelma Schoonmaker. I think she is essential to how kinetic and visceral this experience is. I think the pairing of the cinematography with Michael Chapman with the way that she knows how to pace and edit and hold on a shot and then to cut quickly, I think it's genius. It's essential to this movie working as well as it does. So longtime collaborator of Scorsese, and she brings it for this one. So the editing.
All right. As far as most charismatic, I'm going to go a little unusual. And there's like 20 people listed here that I could read all of them off. But I'm going to go with the sound department on this one. I think the sound is to itself a character, particularly in the ring scenes, and needs to be recognized here. I read before, and I didn't include it in the Did You Know, but they actually destroyed the sound effects that they had recorded for this because they didn't want them to be reused. And I think most of it has to do, like when somebody gets punched, it's the sound of them basically squashing a tomato. So take that for what it's worth.
I am going to go with the character that upon, thinking back to this film after watching it the first time, and then seeing this character show up on screen just made me smile, grin it ear to ear. It's Pesci as Joey. I think he's so entertaining to watch, incredibly electric on screen. This is the role that like catapulted his career. He's essential in this movie as the kind of counterpoint, the other axis opposite of De Niro's chaos, and he holds his own against his brother in a way that is like necessary, but there's just this tenderness while also like putting him in his place when he needs to be. So I just love Pesci in any movie, and I think this was a great Pesci performance, one of my favorites.
Yeah, the first thing that I wrote down was no one, and then upon further reflection, I also went with Pesci because he's so electric in this. And there is a charm to him underneath all of the rough edges. There's something charming and intriguing and alluring about him. I'm like, I want to know more about this guy. I'm a little scared, but I would like to know more. So shout out to Joe Pesci for killing it as always.
I mean, did he amuse you like he was a clown?
Yeah.
Yeah. Every role. I'm just grinning at ear to ear.
Mine's Nicholas Colasanto. I grew up watching Cheers and watching Coach as the bumbling, simpleton. And then to watch him perform as a mafioso, to me, it made striking, he had a lot more acting skills than I thought. And I know that he had, when I talked or learned a little bit about his career, understood that he had done a lot of directing and had done a lot of acting, serious acting, before this part fell into his lap. So I was actually shocked again to see him in the performance and thought he deserved my regards accordingly.
Best scene, I have 5 nominees here. I have Nightclub Brawl, which is like halfway through the film, so you'll forgive me if I basically ignored the first half in order to come up with these 5. But I felt that the second half of the film is probably more important. Then I have Throwing the Fight, which I would include the scene in the locker room afterward, or as the more important of the 2 moments in that. I have the last fight with Sugar Ray. I have Attacking Joey. And I have Jake arrested, so him in the prison cell hitting his head on the wall. What did I miss?
Seeing Vickie.
So are we talking like early on in the movie?
Yep, when he first becomes infatuated with her, a 15-year-old girl.
We'll get to that for classicness.
Yeah, I know. And the other one is the stand-up comedy or stand-up comedian at the end of the film.
Okay. Ladies, anything to add?
Of course. I have 4 to add.
Okay.
The You Want Your Steak scene, Sarah mentioned this earlier, incredible way to be introduced to this character. It is everything we need to know about who this person is, both his unpredictability, but also the way he tries to to be the nice warm guy at the end of like, oh, come on, let's be friends now. Jake meeting Vickie for the first time through the fence. The fence is essential, symbolic, lots of meaning there. I love the scene where Jake and Joey are trying to fix the TV and they have the whole confrontation around, did you sleep with my wife? And you see, it's terrifying. That scene, the way it's edited is really good. We hold on moments much longer than I wanted to. I wanted to cut away, but the camera stays. And then Jake in the prison cell when he hits rock bottom, I think essential to this movie's larger arc. So the shadows, it's all very good.
Anything else? Okay, hearing none, here are our nominees. You Want Your Steak, Seeing Vickie, Meeting Vickie, Nightclub Brawl, Throwing the Fight, Last Fight with Sugar Ray, Fixing the TV, Attacking Joey, Jake Arrested, and Stand Up. Out of these, what is the best scene?
I have Attacking Joey. The one stabilizing force in the entire film. The one thing that keeps him grounded and focused. And his lack of ability to control his obsessions ultimately destroys the thing that keeps him the cell, or keeps him focused and grounded the best.
I'm just going to get my nominees for all of this out of the way and then just kind of step back as the person who's the most critical of this movie. The one that held my attention the most, where I was most acutely interested and definitely put the phone down, was the nightclub brawl. It is the best scene to me. It is my favorite scene. It is the most indelible moment because it is chaotic. It is energetic. There are multiple layers and parts to that scene because it starts at the table. Then you have the whole dichotomy of Vickie being over there, then Joey trying to get her out of there, then he comes back, then you think it's going to be cordial, then he smashes the pitcher, then it's everybody against everybody in the club. Then Joey goes outside, then there's the whole thing on the street. I mean, there's so many pieces to that I find that to be my best, favorite, and most indelible. So I will let you guys take turns now on stuff that you find is actually important as opposed to me.
Yeah, I think for me, the best scene is that last fight with Sugar Ray. It is visceral and powerful. It is gruesome and bloody, and those images have really stayed with me. That is one part of this film that I really remember. But then you also see the emotions from Jake. So you see how this is hurting his body, but also how this is hurting his mind and his soul and just tearing him apart. And so I just think this is a very tragic film about a very tragic and unlikable character. And I feel like that is part of the culmination of all of that. So yeah, that last fight.
Gosh, there are so many good ones. I'm going to go with the scene this time around that I think I was most impressed by, which is Joey and Jake fixing the TV when Jake makes the accusations for the first time. It's so quiet, that scene, in a film that is very loud and flashy in its high action and violence. But the violence of his accusation, I think, just is terrifying. And I think you also see in that scene, Jake is aware of the stakes of the paths before him. And he's kind of wavering for a bit. He stares at Pesci for the longest time and ultimately chooses to commit to that path because his ego just it needs to feed on that narrative to self-destruct. But it's this moment of the point of no return for him. He cannot go back after this, knowing that this is the accusation that he's made, and that those bonds of trust are forever broken and are going to be difficult to mend. So I think the way that film is, the cinematography, the editing, is all working together to fuel this breaking of the core bond of this whole film. And it's Jake's point of he's been devolving, but it's going to be hard to build back up from this one. So I think that scene is electric in that it's so quiet and tense.
For me, my favorite scene is seeing Vickie. I'm a firm believer that every human has no more than 3 or 4 relationships that define most of their life, either good or bad. There will be some that will impact or be significant, but I think ultimately there's 3 or 4 relationships that ultimately define you, whether it be a father-son, father-mother, first spouse, second spouse, child, best friend. There's at least 3 or about 3 or 4 relationships that ultimately define you. And Jake LaMotta is so defined by his obsession with Vickie from the moment he sees her through the entirety of the film. And it really ultimately determines or assesses where he is and what ends up happening to him. It's his inability to deal with it or to understand it or to compartmentalize it or however you want to deal with it. I think that that's a defining moment of the scene. So that for me is a favorite of mine. And as far as most indelible, I think it's the stand-up at the end, because I think that ultimately shows what your inability to understand yourself and understand what your reality is will ultimately lead you to that point, that you're just there trying to survive.
You know, I'd like to argue with your point on the amount of relationships, but the more I think about it, I think you're actually right, and I hate admitting that.
Okay. Wow. Mark one up for me.
That was a very non-Jake LaMotta moment from you, Tom. That was very good.
Well, he did say I'm introspective, so, you know, I got to take occasional.
There you go.
Give him a few credits here. It is supposedly a partnership or, you know, something like that. I don't know.
Thanks for throwing me a bone.
I think the most indelible moment of this film that is like the whole film for me rests on this moment. It's Jake in the prison cell at rock bottom. I think it is like the key to understanding everything else that's big and bombastic before it and after it. Because ultimately, Jake's character is dealing with so much worthlessness and self-hatred. He's crying, and he knows, as he's saying, I'm not an animal. He knows the depths and the stakes of what he's done, I think that's the moment where he actually sees himself clearly and hates what he sees, but it's too painful to look at himself clearly. And so everything after that, as he's older and doing the stand-ups, is still him continuing to run from himself. But that scene is essential to understanding everything about this movie, I think, before and after, is the very human thing of like having to face the ugliest parts of yourself and come to terms with them, or your inability to do that. And you become kind of this caricature at this shell of yourself by the end of the film. But leading up to that moment where he hits rock bottom, that same question of like insecurity and worthlessness is everything that Jake's been trying to prove himself in all of these ways, in his family life, in not feeling like he doesn't deserve this relationship, this family piece, the accolades. Like he doesn't believe that he is worth that, but is desperately trying to prove that he is. And I think that is why, like, that is the scene that haunts me the most about this film, and I think is essential to like unlocking the meaning behind this character who is incredibly human, but like kind of the worst of us in a lot of ways.
With that in mind, Jim, let me just ask you this. This is something that crossed my mind in preparation. When we talk about Scorsese and his cocaine addiction and his self-destructive behavior, is that scene Scorsese?
I was actually thinking about, Let
me put it this way. People who are athletes or celebrities or actors, they get away with stuff until they don't. And then when they don't, they can't understand why they're not in that particular moment. And so I'm sitting there like thinking of this is he got away with everything until he didn't. And then he ends up in jail, and then he can't understand why he didn't. And it now comes to haunt him that this whole celebrity and this whole thing was fleeting. And so I'm wondering if in that moment, Scorsese is saying, that's me at that moment in time when I'm in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's why so many of his films are about characters that do terrible things. And yet it comes from this place of like trying to prove worth and believing that you're not worth anything. Like all of his characters make all of the wrong choices. And there's a shred of goodness in them and potential in them. And he just has a soft spot for characters like that. And I think what you mentioned earlier around a lot of his Catholic guilt and him having to battle those feelings and questions of, am I a bad person or not? Like, do I have evil in me or can I be good? And he loves characters that are good and descend into evil. Like there's something that he's trying to explore within himself. And I think, this character feels like he's trying to understand that a little bit as he's trying to, battle through his own thing. So it's the common thread through a lot of his films that I think this character is a classic Scorsese protagonist in a lot of ways. There's a reason for it.
And just very quickly, my entry for favorite scene is the same as yours, Tom. It is the nightclub brawl. It is such an electric scene. There's so much action and movement, and there's also these moments in it that it's terrifying and not great, but there's also some humorous moments to it too. And so it's such a great time. It's frenetic and chaotic, and I love that scene. But for me, I think the most indelible moment is that shot with the blood dripping off of the ring and just showing just how violent and brutal this sport is, but also it's this like sign of an ending of an era for Jake. So for me, that's just such a prominent visual that I always think about when I think about Raging Bull.
Excellent. Well, that looks like a good spot for our second break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, we will be off after next week until January 14th, but you can still see us over the holidays for 3 live shows coming up on Monday, December 22nd, Monday, December 29th, and Monday, January 5th, all starting at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on our YouTube channel. On December 22nd, we will be showing you our behind-the-scenes process of selecting our next season of the show in 2027. We have some seasonal wrap-up, and we may even discuss our own submissions for the CLP list. On December 29th, we will finally get to our long-awaited James Bond ranking series that we've been teasing for several months now. And finally, on January 5th, we will be joined by my mother to discuss an annual Duncan family holiday tradition, our meal and movie menu. So if you want to catch all of that, we will be live at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on each of those days, or you can catch us anytime after on our YouTube channel at GMOTE Podcast. These episodes will only be available on the YouTube channel, so come check us out, and please hit the subscribe button if you would. Now, Dad, we do have a couple of people to remember this week. Since one of the names is just particularly challenging, I'm going to spare you a bit because
my Japanese is not good.
Yeah. Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, I believe is how it's pronounced. American actor, 75, License to Kill, a Bond film we'll be discussing here very soon. Mortal Kombat, The Man in the High Castle. But the thing that I remember him the most for as a young child watching the Disney Channel made-for-TV movies, Johnny Tsunami. Then we have David Madelon, 82, American film producer. He was part of What's Eating Gilbert Grape and Color of Night. He was also the co-founder of TriStar Pictures. I think for most people like myself, if you looked up our first recognizee here for Johnny Tsunami, he's been in a lot of stuff all over the place. He's that guy, but I guarantee nobody ever knew his name. We recognize these here fondly with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, we will go to best funniest lines here, and we'll just go in a quick round robin fashion. I'll start with I'm the boss. 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 I'm the boss.
Joe LaMotta. If you win, you win. If you lose, you still win. There's no way you can lose.
I will go with, you never got me down, Ray. You never got me down.
When Tommy says this after the De Niro fight, he ain't pretty no more.
Joey LaMotta. They robbed you. They're miserable because their mothers take it up their fucking ass.
Just because I want to. Joey LaMotta. Your mother sucks giant elephant dicks.
Just anything Joey LaMotta says, I think.
Right.
This is Joey to Jake, and Jake's like, I know how I'm going to hit him. What am I going to hit you at the table?
Jake, did Selvey fuck Vickie? Jack, don't start your shit. I mean it. Don't start. You're out?
This is a very much more visual than dialogue movie.
Okay. Well, I got a few more if nobody else has anything.
I'm good.
I got at least two more. It's the, I remember those cheers that give me a stage where this bull here can rage, and though I can fight it, I'd much rather recite. That's entertainment.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom. I'm also out.
Jake LaMotta. I got these small hands. I got a little girl's hands.
My next one is Vickie to Pesci on the phone, who's ordering steak. I want a piece of cake. I felt great choice, girl.
Shut up. You just shut up. I'll fucking take care of you later.
I'm out.
Okay, then I only have one more, and this actually might be the most prophetic outside the bounds of this particular movie. Jake LaMotta. It's only a joke if you know it's a joke. So, I'll leave you on that note. But let's move to the Stanley rubric. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out. So 1985 to today, what is the legacy of this film as split between two equal yet separate groups? That would be the audience and the industry, 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second here?
Oh, I will go first. The public is pretty obvious. For outside of cinephiles, this movie is forgotten. I mean, if you ask people to pick Scorsese films, this might be the 7th, 8th, or 9th film they name, if they even know it. The very informal office poll that I had
The world-famous office poll.
Yes. 4 people had seen Raging Bull or knew anything about it. Was
okay,
4.
then that had heard of it. Okay. Yeah, you got to pose these separately. Who has heard of it, who has seen it. Those are two different things.
4 people had seen it, 5 had heard of it.
Okay.
Yeah, out of 30.
Yeah, well.
Dang.
So.
Sides.
It would have been, if I wouldn't have seen this in 1980, I think I would have had difficulty at this point in time knowing enough about it to want to watch it without having done it for the show. So the public, I'm giving it a 2. And the reason I'm even giving it a 2 at this point in time is because there is enough people who are cinephiles who just love it and who are Scorsese fans who just think this is his best, including me. So I'm going to give it a 2. For the industry, Joe Pesci's first film, and he has had a frickin' long career. Cathy Moriarty, not quite as long, but her arc, she was bright and hot in the 80s and early 90s, and then went over to television in the late 90s into the 2000s before she kind of retired. So those are 2 people. Not to mention the fact that Scorsese really kind of cemented himself. And quite frankly, I think this made De Niro into one of the probably pantheon, the 3 to 5 top actors in Hollywood for 30 to 40 years. So I've got to go with the 4.5 for the industry. So I'm at 6.5 overall.
Well, I only have one disagreement with you, and it's actually kind of surprising. I have this as a full 5 on the industry. I read off, I don't know how many accolades, and then you pile on the stuff that you put there. I don't know how you're getting to a 4.5, but okay, fine. And I have this at a 2 as well for the audience, just because it kind of gets down to that rung of my judgment of the audience where only cinephiles have probably seen it, and that to me has always been a 2. So I have a 7 as well. Well, you had a 6.5. I have a 7.
I actually had a 7 because I, in my mind, thought 5 for the industry. I think this film is so well respected and treasured. It's seen as one of Scorsese's top 5 films, at least in most people's books, from one of the legendary filmmakers. And then I think most people that I would know and talk to have maybe heard of it, but likely probably not seen this. So low in the pop culture fabric of a non-film lover that would like be aware of this can like chat small talk with you about it at all in any significant and meaningful way. So I'm at a 7.
I am also at a 7 for all of the reasons that we have said. 5 for the industry and 2 for everybody else.
I'll make it unanimous, and I'll come up to the 5 on the industry. I guess my reasoning makes more sense to go with a 5 than a 4.5.
Well, thank you for not having to do like advanced decimals here for the math. That'll be a 7 average between the 4 of us. Impact and significance, since you went first the last time, I will go first here, but just a reminder, impact and significance is the first 5 years that we just discounted for legacy, but instead from 1980 to 1985, what is the impact and significance of this movie overall, as split between the same 2 groups, the industry and the audience, 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. I have a 5 for the industry. Scorsese coming back and making a rebound. De Niro basically becoming one of the key leading men at that point, probably at least until I would say about the year 2000, where he kind of took that comedic bent and started doing more supporting roles. But that's a good 20-year run from him, where you've got Midnight Run and you've got Cape Fear and Casino and Goodfellas and Heat and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a significant portion to that there. Pesci does eventually go on to win an Oscar, but he has about a good 10 to 12 year run in here up until probably about 1995. And Cathy Moriarty, he already mentioned. So I find that to be about a 5 on the industry portion of things. As far as an audience perspective, I don't think that what sits with the audience is necessarily the lasting impact of this movie, but maybe more of its knock-on or ripple effects, where you take all of those people supplemented. Yes, them being big in the industry, but Robert De Niro becomes a household name because of this movie. Martin Scorsese becomes probably a household name. Well, probably more after like Goodfellas, because like his 80s was still somewhat up and down. But, you know, it gives him the opportunity to continue to make American films as opposed to moving to Europe. Additionally, I mean, you can start throwing those out. So, but I have that at a 2.5 because, again, the box office was tepid at the time. It wasn't necessarily like well supported, and this was still somewhat of an art house film. So I have a 7.5.
I will go with the industry as a 5. I think the public, I'm a full point down from you, Tom. I think the public really did not pick up on this film. I think it gained notoriety as it generated or went along. I think it picked up steam when it got on HBO. And, you know, I mean, that's where I saw it. I think a lot of people that I know saw it at that time, and it started picking up steam. So I'm at a 1.5 for the public. So I'm at 6.5 overall.
I do want to mention here, this movie didn't come out until December of 1980. So it would have been really hard for you to see it on HBO in 1980. So it had to at minimum be in 1981 or maybe even 1982.
It was probably sometime in the summer or fall of 81 then.
But basically your junior or senior year of high school. And I know that was very, very long ago.
Yes. I only remember very specific events, not always which movie I saw at a particular time on HBO.
That's fair.
I gave this for impact and significance an 8, maybe an 8.5. I think that this film comes at a really significant point in the beginning of Scorsese's career. You know, he had Taxi Driver, which is the thing that like propelled him into the eyes and the attention of the industry. But to have a second piece be this strong, and for him to clarify his vision and what types of stories he wants to tell, solidifying partnerships that have transpired over the course of his entire career, both with De Niro, with Thelma Schumacher. I think that those are all essential to everything else that we get. So I weigh a lot of the ripple effects of the rest of the whole body of work that Scorsese creates from this film. The public may not realize that a lot of the things they've gotten later on came from this film, but they should. And they might not attribute it necessarily to Raging Bull, but it's such an inflection point in Scorsese's career to prove that he can do it not just once, but twice. And to have this under his belt helps propel him for the rest of a lot of the pieces that he makes and the creative collaborations that he has that do significantly change the industry in a meaningful way. So giving this an 8.
And I'm right in the mix with everybody else. I gave this a 7, 5 for the industry, and then 2 for the public. A lot of it because of those ripple effects that Jen was just talking about. I had a really hard time like separating these things out just because this is such an inflection point for Scorsese, and we know the body of work that came after this. So I had a hard time kind of parsing that out. But in the end, I landed on a 7.
That is a 7.25 average between the four of us. Then let's move to novelty here. This is a measure of the originality of anything having to do with the movie and the execution, 5 and 5 points apiece between these two categories for a total of 10. Dad, you will most likely lead classicness, and that's going to require a lot of nuance on that one. So I guess I will lead here. I have this, and I'm probably going to be the lowest person here. I do have this at, as far as originality, it's unlike any other sports movie because it's not really a sports movie in the technical sense of what I think of as a sports movie. It's not redeeming. There isn't like this comeback underdog type story to it. And so it has this different angle. I ultimately ended up at a 4 for that. I don't think it's the most novel thing because it is housed in something familiar, the biopic and in sports, but it's still showing you something different, and I have to at least recognize that even though I have my own consternations here. As far as execution, again, from an artistic side, like I can see the craftsmanship that's here and the artistry. I don't think I appreciate the script writing as much. Paul Schrader movies just don't really do it for me much outside of Taxi Driver. And I don't know. I think outside of the editing and some of the other peripheral stuff, some of the stuff that's at the middle of the movie for me, some of the like I can't really get on it too much from an acting perspective, but it's just the story I think lasts a little bit too long at times. I got a little bit bored, especially at times in the second half. So I had that at a 3. I'm at a 7. And recognizing fully that I will likely be the low person here. So, Sarah, what did you have?
Yeah, for me, I have an 8. For originality, it does do a lot of things within, established genres, but it is a sports movie and a biopic, like you said. So I gave that a 4, and I just love the execution of this. And I think the execution is what sets this apart from so many other of the films. I love the black and white. I love how gritty it is. I love the cinematography, a lot of the things that we already talked about. So yeah, for me, it's an 8.
Yeah, I gave this a 6, mostly because I think the place that it happens in Scorsese's filmography, he's actually doubling down on a lot of new formats and filmmaking styles that he explored, particularly in Mean Streets. I think is like the breakthrough of that like urban camera work environment of like just taking in like streets, like walking shots with our protagonist as like the chaos of New York City's happening around them. Thematically, I think a lot of those similar themes of like the desperation, the obsession have been established and planted earlier, and he's kind of watering them and honing it in this film. I think the most interesting thing that happens in this film is that it's branded in the shell of being a sports drama, even though I really would argue that it's really a character drama, and all the sports stuff actually supports that primary through line more than it being, like you mentioned, a traditional sports film. It's actually not at all. It breaks like so many of the boundaries of a sports film and is really like a deep character study more than anything else. So the playing of expectations is interesting, but maybe not totally novel. So 6.
Well, comes to me.
Really?
Yeah. Originality. I did a Google study. There were something like 150 some boxing movies by 1980. So if I was going to give originality on that alone, it would be like 0.5. But this is much more because it's a film about, as I indicated, obsession and the effects of obsession and how it ultimately destroys. So I'm giving it 2 points up for that. So I'm giving it a 2.5 for originality, but I'm giving 5 for execution because the combination of the directing, the cinematography, the editing, all of that just blows me away yet. I mean, the one scene where he's getting wiped down and they have the water going across his back and it's almost red in a black and white film. And the way that his back is presented, it's almost like he is on the cross and this is the blood type of thing. I almost, anybody else, I would say that's not accurate. But given Scorsese and his Catholic...
Leave it to you to find the Christ-like figure here.
Yeah, well, okay. So I'm at a 7.5.
Yeah, and you're going to really hammer out the decimals on this one. This is a 7.13 average between the four of us. That extra half point.
Yep, thanks.
Okay. Now for what is likely to be our most difficult category of the evening, classicness. This is usually a measure of how well things have aged or not aged. Usually we start at a baseline of 6 as our median point because it's easier for things that have aged poorly to be taken points off than it is usually to add points for things like timelessness or being ahead of their time on particular issues. And especially with some level of hindsight like this movie has, to still concentrate and have certain subject material that is a part of it, I will say, this probably breaks this category from how we've normally scored it. Dead almost every time, to a T. This has unnecessary violence. This has unnecessary sexual assault and content that is like degrading and whatever else. Dana, man of the people, goes off on these things, and yet these are all relatively factual. I have no idea what to do with any of it. Do you not include it? Do you whitewash it? Because I don't think that's going to be valuable. So I'll turn to our senior nuance correspondent, Dana.
Okay. He's trying to date and score with a 15-year-old girl.
Which at the time was not culturally inappropriate somehow.
I know, because quite frankly, 30-some, 40-some years later, I'm in the 1980s, and it was not uncommon for senior guys to be dating freshman girls. Okay? It's not relevant or appropriate. So I can't give it down huge amounts because that's the way it was. The violence against women. I have a lot of problems with it. the hitting, the slapping, the threats of domestic violence, the actual domestic violence. Okay, I understand that was much more prevalent and acceptable at that time. There have been a lot of things in life and in the history of mankind that were acceptable that are no longer. Ergo, slavery, for example. So I have to give it points down. What I'm going to do is, though, the only character in this entire film who comes out looking better at the end than when they started is Vickie.
I can make an argument for Joey.
Yeah, I can understand that argument, but even there, I have some misgivings. At best, Joey might be benign. It may be he's as good at the end as when he started. So I'm going to give it a point up for Vickie. I'm going to go with a 4 or a 5.0 for classicness, simply because of all of the other indications and then the point up. So I'm at a 5 for classicness.
Ladies, I'm going to defer to you and try and round this out at the end because I'm likely again to be the person that's the most harsh. So I'll tack on the caboose here.
Okay, I gave this a 4 for classicness because the question is, has this movie aged well? And for all of the reasons Dana shared, no. This is very painful to watch. I think some of it is part of the point that the movie's trying to make around male aggression and male violence and male ego and how women are the victims and the absorbing agents for a lot of that. And so like some of that's necessary, but I think there's a way if this movie were to be made today to like still achieve that same message, point, thesis, and do it in a more tasteful way. Like it just, this movie like really leans into a lot of it. And I think Scorsese making this film today would have a very different approach while still authentically showcasing the very real visceral experiences of everything that I just shared around the themes. And like some of that is necessary, but it doesn't have to be like there's a way to show that same fear and terror, but not have to actually show so much of it as like every scene in this movie does. So for that reason, I'm giving this a 4.
Yeah, man, I really struggled with how to judge this one. But I came out at a 4.5, mainly for the reasons that have already been shared. I do appreciate that Vickie did leave the situation, and I think that's why I gave it a 4.5 instead of going even lower, because eventually she was able to have that agency and leave him. So I think that is a positive for her character, but there is a lot of not great stuff that we see in this film, and there's some sections that are very, very difficult to watch.
So this movie does play with the timeline quite profusely. His boxing achievements don't overlap so much with the story of how he met and then ended up being with Vickie. That happens later. Like he meets her in, I want to say the late 40s, but they don't get married until like the early 50s. Yet this movie is trying to convince you in like 1943 they're already together. So there's like an actual gap, because I think when the movie tries to say that she was 15, she would have been like 11 in real life, and then that would have been like really troublesome. So right from the jump, the movie's kind of playing around with stuff and doing some stuff that has some historical inaccuracies. And while I understand and can appreciate you don't want to take what actually happened and ignore it completely, there are choices that are made in this film. And I think this is maybe one of the criticisms Dad has normally posited on most Scorsese films, that it's just excessive in a lot of ways. He chooses to be excessive with almost every one of his films. The Wolf of Wall Street, Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, they all have an excessive quality to them that it dials it up with intentionality and in some degrees, I can see where the point is. To me, where I'm going to fall back on this one is what exactly, from an artistic standpoint, is being gained about the human quality or what it is to be human from studying this person. He is the dregs of society. He shows no remorse. He grows not at all during the course of the film. What are we exactly adding to the human experience by focusing on this character for 2+ hours and giving him such a high platform? I just don't understand necessarily why this movie needed to be made. So I'm going to land it at 3, just to be honest with myself here. And that is a 4.13 average between the 4 of us. Now, that isn't nearly as bad as some, but, you know, I think we've gotten down to like a 0.5 before for classicness. I think that's the worst, but I'd have to look.
Yeah.
All right, rewatchability. I guess I'll start here. Insert your own subjective test. And I will be quite honest on this one. I have tried not to be subjective at all this season. I've tried to remain more close to what the category originally was going back to season 1, taking into account the broad swath of audience opinions and what everybody else is. But I think almost universally, people basically say, yeah, I watched it, but I really don't need to rewatch it anytime soon. It is a very difficult film to watch. It is a very intentional movie that you have to put on in order to, like, it's not one of those where it's going to be on TCM or something and you're like, oh, it's Raging Bull, remote drop. So it's slow, it's methodical, it's black and white, which does turn off some people. Its central figure is one of the most unlikable people that you could probably ever meet. I'm going to give it a 2. I think people will watch this film, but the question is actually whether they will rewatch the film.
I can go next because mine might be the highest. I don't know. I gave it a 6.
Okay.
I gave it a 6 because obviously it is a very difficult, non-pleasant film to watch. No one's having a good time unwinding out on Monday night watching Raging Bull. No one. If you do, you might be a psychopath. But part of rewatchability is also the amount of layers that are uncovered with a second, third, fourth rewatch that is significant to understanding deeper about what the film is trying to do and say. I would rate a film much lower if on the second watch, like, the law of diminishing return truly applies. All of the funny moments get less funny. All of the jump scares get less exciting. All of the thrills, like, there's so much meat in the text, in my opinion, that is to be unearthed, that a second, third rewatch actually allows you to be removed from some of the visceral experiences of the difficult scenes to really see the intentional choices that are being made to unpack this character study. So for that reason, I'm landing at a 6, which might be the highest out of our group.
Yeah, I took this category kind of similarly to Jen over. It's not a fun film to rewatch. It's not one that I'm just going to casually throw on, but I think it is worth watching multiple times because there is so much here. And so I gave it a 5.
I'm at a 4. It's something that I think that I would tell people they need to watch once. And I might sit and watch at least part of it with them. But I've seen it twice now within 6 months. I don't need to see it again for another decade, if even then. So I'm 72.
You're
I
72?
may never get around to watching this again. And that's okay.
You gave yourself an additional 10 years?
Huh?
You just said you were 72.
62, excuse me. And 10 years, I'll be 72. And I doubt that's what I ultimately meant. And I'm like, I may never get around to watching this again. And that's okay with me. I mean, I managed to get by from 1981 or 82, whatever it was I watched it, until 2025 to watch it again. And I was fine. And I'll be fine if I wait another 40 some years to watch it again. So I doubt if I'll be around in 40 some years, but if I am, I doubt if I'll know where I am, but But maybe that's the best way to enjoy watching Raging Bull for a 5th or 6th time.
I would love to be there to hear your running commentary when you are watching this in 40 years.
Yeah, you just unlocked the secret to the rewatchability of this film.
Whatever the live tweeting version of 2020 or 2035 is. Yeah, we'll figure that out.
It'll just be a brainwave. Somebody will think and it'll happen.
Okay. I mean, I suppose that's possible. But for audience score on this one, we had an 81% for Google users and a 93% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us an 8.7. On rewatchability, I should have mentioned that we got a 4.25 average between the four of us. So, to repeat the categories, we had a 7 for legacy, a 7.25 for impact and significance, a 7.13 for novelty, a 4.13 for classicness, a 4.25 for rewatchability, and an 8.7 for audience score, giving us a final total of 38.46, and currently placing it on our list at number 231 out of a possible 263 films that we've done, and in between The Waterboy at number 230 and Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans at 232.
Excellent. That's what you expect for Raging Bull and The Waterboy to be right next to each other.
Great sports films.
I'm just glad I was here to balance out Tom tanking this film to way lower on the list. So
I was fairly around everybody else's scores.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
You didn't do too bad.
Fair. Tom, I think you need to have some more self-destructive behaviors and then watch this movie.
Trust me, I have my own.
That's the answer.
Anyone who knows me knows I'm very self-destructive, but it's not in the ways that most people are with like fun things like drugs or alcohol or romantic relationships, I guess. Some people do that too. Yeah. Mine are much more genetic. Anyway, if you have any commentary for us, good, bad, or otherwise, you can find us on any of our socials at Gmode Podcast. You can email us at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on our website, RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmode Podcast. Let's quickly move to some remaining questions here. Does Jake ever make up with Joey? I didn't read the autobiography or the book, but I have to assume that the answer is contained with there. But assuming that none of us have gone into any depth or detail and really don't care to read his book, do we think that they ever did? I think that's
I'm going with
probably
no.
Yeah.
From
I
this
think
movie, nah.
I think it's probably irreparable at that point. You push somebody to a limit, you attack them in their own home, in
front of their children.
Yeah. The fact that in that final scene, Joey's not fighting, he's not angry, there's no emotion. I'm like, that he's done. Like he's not even willing to spend emotional energy on him anymore. He's done.
Is this De Niro's best performance? I think for Dad it is. I still say Taxi Driver.
I would agree. I think it's not his best performance. I think he explores the depths of like parts of what he can do through this film. So I think it's essential to like him unearthing how far he can push himself as an actor. But I think Taxi Driver, even some of his other films, there's a lot more threads, emotional threads woven into some of the performance that are more complex, more nuanced, more multidimensional, that I think make it more interesting performances for De Niro.
Yeah, I think this is one of his best, but I would rank Taxi Driver like a hair above this one.
I'd say this is number one. Number two is Rocky and Bullwinkle is Boris Badenov.
At least if you're going to do that, like say Meet the Parents, where he should have been nominated for like supporting actor or something.
Oh, Boris Badenov.
Was he Boris? Because I thought he was Fearless Leader.
Oh, you're right. He was Fearless Leader.
Because Boris, I thought, was Jason Alexander.
It was. You're right. So
just keep saying that. Yep. Anyway, and my final question here, since these two are often compared to each other and one is villainized because of the other, Ordinary People or Raging Bull? I'm an Ordinary People fan, obviously.
So am I.
I haven't seen Ordinary
People, so
So Raging Bull, but we might come back with a different answer.
Fair enough. Okay, well, with that, assuming that we don't have any additional remaining questions from anyone else, I just want to say thank you to both of our guests for being on for your second time with us. You are welcome back anytime. Currently, I don't believe you are on our schedule for next season, but if you want to come back at all, you're certainly welcome. But remind everybody again what you're working on and where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It is always so much fun. So thank you, Tom, for enduring this movie again and joining us for this conversation. It was a blast. You can find us, Movies and Us, wherever you get your podcasts. Go follow us on YouTube at Movies and Us Pod. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, also at Movies and Us Pod.
Excellent. Dad, any remaining thoughts for the week?
No, again, I'm looking forward to things. I did finish up Death by Lightning, a Netflix series on the Garfield assassination based on Candace Millard's book. Really enjoyed that. I know your mother did as well. And I'm looking forward to taking her to see a movie that she has an interest in, which is Nuremberg, which I'm hoping to get her to next week. Being a German or an exchange student in Germany, she has a real interest in that era of German history. And I think it looks very intriguing as far as I'm concerned, between Michael Shannon and John Slattery's performances. I'm looking forward to them. I think Russell Crowe as Hermann Göring is going to be very interesting as well.
So we have not been in the same location, so we've seen different things. I got to 3 different movies over the weekend that, at least for some people, are all going to be in the Best Picture race, although it seems like one of them is slowly dropping out, and I will let you figure out which one of them it is. But at least up until this point, they had all been in kind of this roughly 10 to 15 films that have been suggested. I got to Hamnet on Friday night after my con law final, which, given the emotionally draining nature of finals period, to go and then see that movie was also emotionally draining, but in a good way. I won't say too much more on any of these because I think we'll be discussing them several times throughout the next several months. And frankly, if none of you have seen them, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think at least all 3 are worth some level of attention. For me, Hamnet was the best of these 3, but for all varying degrees of difference that it may not have related to me. On Saturday morning, I got to Sentimental Value, which actually this movie and the next movie I'm going to talk about, I think, are actually ones that I think, Dad, you'd appreciate a lot more than I do, because they probably will mean more to you specifically with where you're at in your life and how they're kind of structured. So I'll be curious to see how much of a different opinion we end up having on the 2 of those. And then finally, Jay Kelly, which came out on Netflix over the last weekend with George Clooney and Adam Sandler, the new Noah Baumbach film. I do plan on getting to, on Friday, the new Knives Out film is supposed to be coming out. I'm planning on watching that. I'm finally, because it seems like it has gotten into the Best Picture race, going to adventure into Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein film. And then I think I had one other one that I was going to try and catch, but basically I've got it boiled down to, I haven't seen many of the international favorites. So like The Secret Agent hasn't been around here. I missed when it was on at the university. It was just an accident. So I'm not sure when that's now coming back around. And then No Other Choice, I think, is coming here to Madison sometime in late December, maybe early January, that I'd like to catch as well. But outside of those, the only other one that's a Oscar nominee favorite is one that hasn't come out yet, and that's supposed to come out, I think, Christmas Day, is Marty Supreme. So I think that's the remaining lone outlier. And then I think at some point, because it seems almost a lock that Amy Madigan's going to be nominated, I have to watch Weapons, which I'm such a wuss. I'm not looking forward to it in any way, shape, or form from what people have kind of described about it so far. But that is likely my weekend schedule, and I'll probably be watching some of that, since next week we won't have a remaining thoughts because we have already pre-recorded it. So this means that this is technically the final recording of our season 7, even though we have an episode next week. And so I just want to say again, I know that we're very profusive in our thanks and appreciation next week on the recording that we have, but just thank you to everybody that's been a part of everything that we've done this season, the amount of growth that we've had as a show, the amount of new things that we've tried, the CLP list that literally isn't even a full year old from its genesis to this point, but that you will know the full reveal on next week when we get to Christmas Eve. But we have some live shows coming up. We've got a whole bunch of new stuff that we're planning on trying to do. And there's just a lot of people individually and outwardly to thank, but I think I get to most of them last week. So what I will say here, for as much shit as I gave you during this episode, thank you, Dad, for another good year. I don't think we take enough time as men sometimes to appreciate and share with each other the quality time that we have. And even though it's somewhat stressful and we definitely get on each other's nerves and somewhat are dismissive about certain other people watching the film or not, I still do appreciate the several hours that we spend on this project every week together. And so thank you to you.
Well, let me just say this, and I don't say it often enough. As much difficulty as I had, and in part the show is, the studio is named after my dad, and I respect the fact that my dad did the best he could, but he had a very shitty childhood and had difficulty as a father. Okay, but he did the very best. I can give you a long list of things that he did very well. Okay, but I tried my best when my wife got pregnant to make a determination as how I was going to be as a father. And so I take great pride in the fact that Tom and I have a very great relationship. We've spent a lot of time when he was a small boy playing and spending time. And I consider this in large part an extension of the relationship I tried to establish from an early age. So I very much appreciate it. And I really do think you have become a very wonderful human, very wonderful adult, and appreciate everything there is, even if you are somewhat
of a butthead,
condescending towards me at times. So on that note, Merry Christmas to everybody and Happy New Year.
And we will see you technically next week, but also on our live shows and then for next year. So again, thank you to everybody. That looks like a good place to stop it for this week. Thank you for listening. Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is? Next week, for our 293rd episode, we welcome back Betsy and Trent Gorham of the Never Seen It Pod to discuss Promising Young Woman from 2020, celebrating its 5th anniversary. Written and directed by Emerald Fennell, cinematography by Benjamin Cracoon. Music by Anthony Willis, editing by Frederick Thorval, starring Carey Mulligan, Bo Burnham, Allison Brie, Jennifer Coolidge, and Clancy Brown. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at GreatestAllTimeMoviePodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle @GGoatPodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.